Hello, everybody. My name is Giulia Mantovani, and I'm Head of Marketing Consumer Insights for Canyon. Maybe let me quickly walk you through what I'm going to do with this presentation. The idea is to give you a quick overview of how our team works and hopefully a bit of insight on how insights work in the cycling industry. And then I want to walk you through a business case, which I call the bandwagon effect. This is actually something that didn't just affect Canyon, but the whole cycling industry. And it's a bit of a collective hallucination case. And I think using better insights could have helped dealing with that better. So I think I thought it was interesting to share. But first, a quick introduction about Canyon. We are a cycling company. Canyon was founded in 2002, and it's the world's largest direct-to-consumer manufacturer of premium bicycles. So we are a cycling company, and what distinguishes us from the rest is we sell completely online. And I would say we're a medium-sized company. We have about 1,700 employees, about 100 million turnover, and we have won in our history over 100 World Championship titles. Those of you that are into cycling, might know Mathieu van der Poel or Jasper Philipsen from the Tour de France. They ride our bikes. Market and consumer insights are quite novelty, let's say, in the cycling industry, because a lot of these companies were founded by people that were cyclists themselves, so they had a passion for cycling, and they were the customer in a way. So for a long time, they just didn't implement market or consumer insights team internally. And since a few years now, they've started, of course, getting bigger. The market has become more competitive, and so they started making this more professional and then building teams. In our case, we sit within the strategy department. So also going back a bit to what Katie was saying, we are directly embedded in strategy and at global level. And that is a very good position for us because we are then very well aligned with the company priorities. And at the same time, it gives us some independence from all the stakeholders we work with, which are quite a lot. As you can see, we have category management, R&D, innovation, marketing, sales, digital operations. So it's a quite varied audience we have. And that gives us a bit the freedom to prioritize projects in an independent way, let's say. So we're a relatively small team. We have a lot of stakeholders. So how do we prioritize projects? And we basically have three principles. One is relevance. We always try to consider and also ask our stakeholders, how important is this project for our business? Because maybe it's super important to you, but in terms of impact it will have on the business, it's relatively small. Maybe it will just affect a small product line or a small category. And then the second one is impact. So what we really want to avoid is that people look at our research and they go, oh, interesting, and then they do nothing about that. So we really try to, we created a framework where we try to force our stakeholders to tell us which decisions are they going to take based on the research we're going to do. And then the third one is efficiency. So, of course, we are going to evaluate the effort required in relation to the relevance. So, of course, we will allocate more effort to bigger projects that have a high impact, higher relevance, and smaller effort to less impactful ones. So through our insights, we help in a variety we support in a variety of decisions, from improving forecasting and optimizing our orders, solving issues in challenging markets or geographies. Maybe somebody came to us and say, hey, we're struggling a bit in Italy. Why is this happening? And then we did a deep dive on that and tried to understand what was happening there, what were the barriers. We've also optimized our portfolio for actual customers. This has been a big, let's say, project for us. In cycling, the average time between purchases for performance cyclists is 3.5 to 4 years. So you have quite some time to do research and to optimize your portfolio for for customers. And so one thing we tried to do, for instance, was we do a customer segmentation every year. And we now have the rule that we can only have one bike per customer profile. So we really reduce our portfolio because before, maybe we discovered we had 3 different bikes for the same customer profile, and then we were cannibalizing our sales, basically. So we work a lot with R&D, helping design better products. And then we've also working with the innovation team. And there what we're trying to do is really making sure that we produce meaningful innovation, so just not innovation for the sake of it, but innovation that customers actually need and use. And then we've also supported marketing and service and after sales. Now, to the business case. So I just want to say this happened before my team was charged with market insights, so I'm not taking responsibility. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting case. So basically what you can see here is the total volume of premium bicycle bikes, sold in the time span. You see, I hid the numbers for confidentiality, but you get the picture. So basically, you had a certain amount before COVID. Then in 2020, you see a massive spike. From one year to the other, we sold, this is as an industry, not just Kenyan, but we sold 30% more bikes. And then, gradually, the market went back to normal. When you look at the different colors in the stacked bars, you can see that the composition changed. So you have categories like e-urban in red or e-mountain bike in green that gain share, while others, like mountain bike and urban, they lost share. So this is all good and well, but basically what happened is during COVID, companies rushed to stock bikes to meet the increased demand. And then what happened when COVID ended, then there was a massive overstock situation in the market. Everybody started discounting, and that led to financial trouble. Kenyan, luckily, was, let's say, relatively well positioned compared to others, but there was quite some turmoil in the market. So what are the common reasons why this happened? This is, by the way, a textbook example of the bandwagon effect. So, but why does this happen? And it happened quite recently, when the phenomenon was quite well known. It's normally 3 reasons. So the first one is they know something we don't know. So you might think that other companies, know something that you don't. Second one is, okay, we know this is probably, the demand is going to go back, and you can anticipate the right scenario, but you think, okay, if we don't do it as the others are doing, then we might lose market share. So we have to do it, even if we already anticipate the market is going to go down again. And then the third one is just really an emotional thing. You get caught in a frenzy, and you're like, okay, I can't miss the moment. I need to act now. So how do you avoid this? We came up with three pillars, let's say. The first one is focus on signal and not noise. So, of course, try to first cross-check signals. First understanding, where is this information coming from? Why are we getting from everybody there, raising their orders and so on? And to give you an example, in this case, a lot of this came from suppliers. Of course, suppliers were saying, hey, we're getting a lot of orders. If you want to order your bikes, you need to, lock your orders now. But of course, suppliers, when they've sold to bike manufacturers, then their job is done. Like they've completed their sales process. And what happens with the final demand in the end is, just so much their business. And so that, for instance, put a lot of pressure because in cycling, for instance, you have, in terms of key components, you only have 2 big suppliers, which are Shimano and SRAM. And these were really pushing companies to place orders. And so, people were very much influenced by them, but if you had checked other sources, maybe you could have evaluated the situation better. By the way, on a side note, of course, this happened to a certain extent because there were these kind of pressures, and also once a company starts going down this line, then it still puts pressure on the others because they will discount at some point. And if they discount, they will put pressure on your prices anyway. So here I'm oversimplifying a bit, but just to look at this from a market insights and consumer insights standpoint. The second one for me is really the core one, which is build a culture of long-termism. So it's very easy once you look at the recent data to say, okay, we see an upward trend line. But what you should always focus on is, where is the growth coming? Is this something contingent, or is this something that is rooted in a long-term trend? And normally, long-term behavioral shifts don't happen overnight. So if it's something that is really a behavioral shift from customers, normally it's years in the making. So it's very rare that it's something that it changes from one day to the other. And then it sticks. And then the third one is institutionalized independent thinking. So really to keep calm in this situation, we set up processes that, for instance, now every forecasting and ordering meeting starts with market insights. So people, if they say, hey, we think next year we're going to grow above the market, they need to justify why they think that. And then you can also set up teams in the company that are supposed to act as devil's advocates, so really challenging what is being presented. And then the third one is risk framing. So of course, in that situation, maybe you might really see the risk, oh, we will lose market share. But if you reframe this and help business leaders and decision makers to see, okay, but there's also this other risk that if we now order more, and then the market goes down again, then we might have a huge problem down the line. And then the final one is game theory application. So sometimes calling out that people might not be making the best decision, and by people I mean competitors, might not be making the best decisions, but might just be making defensive decisions because they think also other competitors won't make the best decision, can help frame your own decisions better. So in terms of going back to the first point, where to find signals, this is a list of the sources we use. I won't go too much into detail, but we use, of course, industry data and reports. Our industry is a bit special in the sense that there aren't a lot of publicly available information. A lot of the companies are privately held, so it's quite hard to find reliable market data, and even more so for premium bikes, so above a certain price range. So we try to collect all industry data and reports that we can. Normally they are at national level, and there's a huge variety in data quality. You have countries like US, UK, where you have very granular, detailed data. You have countries like, maybe Spain, France, where it is a lot less granular. Then we try to complement that with talking with local experts, both internal and external. Again, you need to be a bit careful because they might be the first ones to get in the frenzy, but they're also very good at anticipating trends. Then, of course, we are a D2C company, so we have a lot of web information, and we have all the information of the sales coming through our website and the traffic and the online behavior. So we use that. Again, you always need to be careful, and that is just our picture. Doesn't mean that that reflects the market. Then, of course, we look at customer profiles. Again, if there are changes happening long-term, you should see that reflected in your customer profile. So you should see profiles changing and emerging that weren't there before. Then we do some interviews with retailers. Again, we don't have retailers directly, but we have a network of what we call ASPs, which are service partners, that can be also multi-brand shops, or can be shops that service different bikes from different brands, so they might have a feeling of what's happening in the market. And then, of course, we do some competitor benchmarking. In some of these instances, we also use AI, of course. But again, for our market, because there's not a lot of public data, then AI is quite limited because it just doesn't have the sources to fetch from. So finally, just a zoom in on, let's say, the long-term trends and how this is supposed to show how differently they play out when they're there or not. So for instance, if we focus on urban bikes, in red you can see the electric urban bikes, and in blue what we call push urban bikes, so the non-electric ones. And this is the same data as before, but as you can see, so the electric urban bikes and also the push ones, they had a spike during COVID, but for e-urban, the growth also remained after COVID, while for urban, it just went down. And the reason is that that has been years in the making. So of course, more and more people are using bike to move in cities like Berlin, because it's a more sustainable and healthy way to go around. Sometimes it's a lot more efficient than a car if you live in the inner city. And also cities really push on the development of cycling infrastructure, so that brought more people on bikes. And the reason why they took over the urban market is that, of course, cycling with an e-bike requires less effort, you don't get all sweaty to work, and also you can carry a lot more loads. You can even carry kids, so it's really a substitute for a smaller car in a city. When you look, for instance, at road bikes, for us, road bikes are performance road bikes, so the ones people use at Tour de France. You can see you just had the spike during COVID, because there was no reason why the usage here should change, aside from the contingent reason that people were locked down, they couldn't do much else, so they decided to try cycling. But immediately, as COVID subsided, then people went back to normal. And this is, by the way, one of the areas where the major overstock was and the major discounts were. So that's that. Questions, comments?